Welcome back on this somber day of Carl Weathers' passing. I always intended to do episode 76 in honor of the fact that it is Groundhog Day, and on a day like today, we remember Carl Weathers, and hopefully we can smile, remember him in Happy Gilmore. And I want to talk about one of the best comedies, one of the funniest films produced by the Hollywood studio system in decades, at least 4 or 5 decades. And that is the Harold Ramis mega classic with Bill Murray, Groundhog Day, which was not actually released on Groundhog Day in 1993. It was released about a week and a half later, but it doesn't really matter. It is just an incredible film. And I remember I saw it with my father on its opening day, the movie theater, which used to be called the Cinema 150. Then it was just called the Syosset. I saw a lot of movies there in the late 80s and into the 90s until it closed really in 2000. And now that's, for those who know the area, Long Island, Jericho Turnpike near the 135, Crest Hollow. It's now an Equinox Gym. And it was a movie that in the pre-internet era, I had read a little bit about I used to subscribe to Entertainment Weekly, and I would read monthly magazines like Premiere. I wasn't hoity-toity enough at the time to read like Film Comment and American Film, and those were magazines I got into later when I was in film school. Totally different experience reading American Film, Film Comment versus Entertainment Weekly and Premiere. But I had read enough about it, and I considered myself, a pretty significant fan of Bill Murray. I really liked Stripes, loved Ghostbusters, liked Ghostbusters 2, and I knew of his work on Saturday Night Live. I read the book called Saturday Night about the kind of early days of the show, and I'm not a fan of Meatballs. And Caddyshack, I really was just kind of ho-hum about. It wasn't anything that was groundbreaking or earth-shattering to me. I hadn't seen his serious turn in, Razor's Edge, but really liked Bill Murray. So I was excited to see the movie. And when a movie hits hard one way or the other, either disastrously bad or hopefully really good, sometimes remember the day in which we saw it. And it was oddly enough, it was a cold, gray, overcast day that Dad and we were living at what's now Eagle Rock across the street. So we didn't even have to take the car. We probably did, but we could have just walked across the street to the movie theater. And that's that industrial park where Cablevision and News 12 is located, for reference. But we didn't see the first screening of the day. There was like a noon screening, and we got there more like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. And in a much lighter, narrower, smaller version of my absurd story of a bunch of at least a dozen and a half New York University cinema studies majors seeing The Shawshank Redemption 3 weeks before it was released, seeing a final cut of Shawshank, and leaving that screening, which I stupidly didn't go to, thinking the movie was crap. That everybody was like, it's fucking garbage. I read King's story, this movie sucked, whatever. Nobody liked it but one guy. And I still to this day don't understand how that was possible. When Dad and I were gathering outside the theater, and it was a line because the reviews had been good. I believe that Newsday gave it 3.5. I hadn't seen the Siskel and Ebert review, but the sense I was getting from TV, some of the critics like Dennis Cunningham didn't really get into too much spoilers, but he liked it. The sense I was getting was this is a good movie. Most of the people coming out of the theater told us not to waste our money. There were a lot of people coming out of that theater, and one guy in particular was laughing at us for being stupid enough to buy tickets. He said, "Oh my God, is this movie awful? Save your money." And he's laughing. And his wife is like, "It was a piece of shit." That was the general sense I got from those leaving the theater at the Syosset the first showing on this Friday. Didn't dissuade me. I already was thinking like a movie critic, even though NYU was still a year and a half away. Dad and I saw the movie, and I knew that that Bill Murray was reliving the same day ad nauseum, and I really mean ad nauseum. A lot of people didn't know that that's what the movie was going to go, and that's the direction the movie was going to go in. Because if you just hear the title, it's about a weatherman who gets trapped in Punxsutawney. That's kind of how you could describe it that way. But I feel like most people knew that they were in for a kind of crazy screwball, surrealist, Salvador Dali level surrealism where, wow, what are we really looking at? There were some people who wanted to like the movie, and I don't mean at that screening, but just in general, wanted to like the movie but couldn't wrap their heads around the concept. And I'll never forget this. I should point out, before I get into detail, my dad and I both absolutely loved it. Dad liked it more than Ghostbusters. He was a huge Ghostbusters fan, as was I. A few days later, I was working part-time at my dad's accounting firm while, going to college. Two of Dad's partners, the late, great Roy Kramer and the late, great Bernie Rosen. Mr. Shulman at first hadn't seen it yet. They were going to go see it, especially because Dad, who was not known to overly praise a film that wasn't good, like he had never led them astray. Come on, we're going to see the movie. Mr. Shulman was telling us that he and his wife were going to see it, and Mike's, yeah, we're going to see it. So both these two other older partners at the time, Bernie Rosen and Roy Kramer, saw the movie on its opening weekend and didn't like it. Roy, how come you didn't like it? I didn't understand. I just didn't understand what was happening. Well, which part? And then his partner, his buddy, Bernie Rosen, goes, and Bernie spoke like he was one of those kind of, was always like aggravated, agitated kind of guy. He said, but that couldn't happen. But that couldn't happen? But that couldn't happen. And Roy also said, yeah, the movie just kind of lost me. That couldn't happen. Well, there's no such thing as Superman, and there's no such thing as a creature from Krypton that can melt beams with their eyes. That's different. What do you mean that's different? Either you go with the story or you don't. That's why you didn't like it, because it couldn't happen? 98% of Hollywood movies, it couldn't happen. I didn't really get angry like that, but that's one of the dumbest reasons for they just couldn't get into it, because they couldn't accept that we were in a fantasy world. Wizard of Oz couldn't happen either. Newsflash. Anyway, there were some people who were hung up on the surrealist aspect, because the movie appears to be grounded in reality when it starts and then suddenly goes into the fantasy realm. I love that movie from the first, and I didn't get what the film was going for. This was a time in my life I was still a very negative. I wasn't negative on movies. I love movies. I wasn't cynical when it came to going to the films. Dad and I went to the movies a lot. We were renting movies from, Blockbuster of the day and watching on TV. He got all the movie channels. By that point, he figured out, you know what, let's splurge. Let's get all the movie channels while we're here. So we got everything. We got HBO, we got Cinemax, we got the movie channel, we got Showtime, we got Encore. He paid for it all. It wasn't that much money. And he just figured, you know what, let's just do it. So we watched a lot of movies together, and he'd like to, if he was by himself, he'd just like to put on a movie if he wasn't watching a Yankee game or a Knicks game. But I didn't get that the movie was making a larger point, that it seems that the entire purpose of Phil Connors, Bill Murray's character, the kind of wacky weatherman, we were really not even that wacky, he was just an asshole. When I think wacky weatherman, I think of Steve Martin's character in L.A. Story, Harris K. Telemacher, who was also a weatherman who gets caught in a surrealist, almost a time warp kind of shit. Nothing like, as crazy as Groundhog Day. But his character he's also a weatherman in a comedy, a great comedy of the 90s, and he gets caught in some weird shit with things that don't make sense. That works too. Totally different kind of movie. If anything, more over-the-top screwball. Because despite the fact that Bill Murray keeps reliving the same fucking day over and over and over and over and over, each day is taken seriously. Each iteration of the same day, of Groundhog Day in Punxsutawney. Presumably it's supposed to be 1992. We don't know because the movie came out in 93. But the movie is about can Phil Connors grow and change? Is this schmuck, this jackass, is he capable of kind of living up to the potential that I guess he always has had to do a lot more with his life than just make money and be a clown on television and have a lousy attitude? So when I watched the movie the first time and Phil learns all of these tricks, he beds the one woman, Nancy Taylor, great stuff, awesome. And then he moves on to Andie MacDowell. Andie MacDowell was in a lot of really terrific films in the 90s. I wasn't really that big of a fan of her. I kind of thought that she didn't do much in Four Weddings and a Funeral for Hugh Grant's character to flip his lid to the extent that he did. Yes, she's beautiful. She was a top fashion model. No doubt that she's beautiful. But there were a lot of movies, The Object of Beauty with John Malkovich. She was in a ton of movies and I just didn't think that she hit it right. Groundhog Day, she is perfect. Her kind of the semi-hesitant way that she has of speaking in general is so good for the character. And she sells this, hard-charging, hard-working, successful young producer who is, trying to move up the ladder. And Bill Murray just basically wants to get her clothes off. And as he keeps repeating this day and is essentially trying to trick her, get her into bed, where have we heard that one before? Just not on a scale like this, where you're doing the same day 300 times so you can know exactly what she likes. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Get it? But I didn't get what was happening, which is that I thought that he was going to have his way with her. And I wasn't really thinking of sex in that way, but I thought, okay, they're connecting. And this is how the movie is going to wrap up, where he learns how, but that doesn't work. But in my 19-year-old jackass brain, I wasn't thinking that, no, there's more here. There has to be more here than just him learning about her so he can use that to his advantage and get her clothes off. So when he fails at that, when he's not able to go all the way, and he doesn't have unlimited time because, as he says in the movie, there may not be a tomorrow, there wasn't one today. And there haven't been any tomorrows, as his character just keeps reliving the same day again and again. Then the movie takes a dark turn where he tries to essentially end his life, and it doesn't matter. He can't do anything. Whatever he does, it's 6 a.m. the next morning, the same morning, and Cher, Sonny and Cher's I Got You, Babe. It's a great song. It's a good thing that's a great song, because in immortal words of Roger Ebert, talking about the movie That Thing You Do, another film where the same song is played again and again ad nauseum, it's a good thing that I Got You, Babe is catchy and still plays, because boy, do we hear it a lot in Groundhog Day. Holy shit, we hear that song an awful lot. When Bill's character goes through this terrible trauma where he's literally trying to kill himself, and the film in that point goes into what you would call dark comedy territory. It had been light and frothy, and it is light and frothy for many stretches afterwards. But it's telling us, yes, it's a comedy, but this man is going through something that we can't really relate to, and he doesn't know what to do. Killing himself isn't going to work. So we don't know exactly when the click happens, but Phil Connors starts trying to do good, saying, I'm here. It's not good enough that I can hook up with random women, that I can walk around with millions of dollars just for this one day because I know how to steal money and not get caught, literally. He decides that he is going to try to take care of every issue that crops up in that town on that day. And Bill Murray, who, as I said, he had this kind of angry snark. He always had this angry snark, going back to Stripes, going back to Saturday Night Live, the sarcasm, the cynicism. Even though he's not a Gen Xer, he's a boomer, Bill Murray, but the angry snark spoke to Generation X. Absolutely. And the way that he ad-libbed so many great lines in Ghostbusters, that's our guy. His character in Stripes, that's our guy. that just kind of devil may care, screw off attitude, that kind of thing. But Murray rises to the occasion as a performer, and he gained a lot of acclaim in later roles, such as Lost in Translation, where there were many people thought he might win Best Actor, because here was a funny man who had it in him to sell the drama. And Steve Martin did that as well, and tried to, in movies like Grand Canyon, which I absolutely love, Lawrence Kasdan's early 90s, just a phenomenal ensemble film. But Murray hits it. He hits it in Groundhog Day. The turn in his character is not jarring. It feels earned. And there are so many comedies where it's like they skip over certain things that we should know and see and believe to get to the happy ending. This movie doesn't do that. It takes all the steps. And Andy McDowell as Rita is so consistent. Bill needs to be better to get her. He needs to be a stronger human. He needs to earn her. And the movie, everything works. The dark stretches of the film work. When Bill Murray is trying to help, there's an old man in town. Everything is amazing. The Stephen Tobolowsky, a great supporting actor in so many movies in that decade. And I love the movie Sneakers with Robert Redford and an all-star cast of Dan Aykroyd, River Phoenix, Sidney Poitier, David Strathairn, Mary McDonnell. Oscar nominees up and down, right? Sir Ben Kingsley. And Stephen Tobolowsky is fucking great in that movie too. Phil, Ned, Ryerson. Amazing. The scenes with those two guys, they just keep doing the same scene again and again. It's never not funny. And Bill even cast his real life brother, Brian Doyle Murray, as one of the Punxsutawney kind of chieftains that are responsible for, with the Groundhog. Humor is subjective. But if you haven't seen Groundhog Day, by all means, see it. I know very few people, other than those initial few kind of, older people who maybe were expecting a different movie. Almost everybody loves this film. And there are certain movies that will always play. And see, Airplane, the original Airplane, is one of the funniest comedies I've ever seen. The original Naked Gun, both from Jerry and David Zucker and Jim Abrams. But those films, to some extent, are products of their time. They are dated because there is a lot of topical material that doesn't work anymore because it doesn't make sense. Literally, it doesn't make sense what they're talking about. Groundhog Day is timeless. Yeah, nobody has a cell phone. But the guts of the story, the substance of the story is beautiful and it works. And Chris Elliott, an actor that, often rubbed people the wrong way, they tried to make him a star in the 90s in movies like, Cabin Boy, and David Letterman famously made a cameo because he liked Chris Elliott. But Chris Elliott is really good in this movie. And Schitt's Creek is fantastic as Roland. But that's a situation, an actor who was already kind of a polarizing, well, he's not funny, what is he doing here? But his character works. He's believable. And the entire supporting cast, they don't even really come across as actors. They come across as real people in the town. I should point out, a very young Michael Shannon is one of the townspeople. And if you know he's there, you'll know who he is if you check out the movie again. But there's a lot of debate, and this is something I love. This is the kind of philosophical debate I really like. Because as much as I like to debate and argue movies, I'm not looking to fight with people. Your opinion on this movie, if you tell me it sucks in the comments, it's just as valid as anything. It is purely subjective. But I like that this movie is open to interpretation as far as how long is Phil Connors stuck there? I have seen it argued that he is there for 100 years. That this man, who I guess is supposed to be in his early to mid 40s. They don't really say. It doesn't matter how old he is. And Andy McDowell's character is probably supposed to be 30, 35. She's definitely younger than him. But you try to, even in the context of this movie, which I love, when you think about this, reliving the same day for 100 years? Reliving the same day for a month would be absurd, beyond belief. That might be okay depending on the day, right? If you're in Vegas or whatever. But he's reliving a day that he doesn't want to be there. That was like the whole setup. He doesn't want to be in Punxsutawney. He thinks it's beneath him to be there. and obviously gets his comeuppance. I don't know that he spends 100 years there. That seems like it could be a stretch, but it's at least a decade. There's no way that he could do everything he does and master certain talents that he masters through the course of the latter part of the film. There is no way that he could do it in less than 10 years. And again, not to do big spoilers, but let's say that at a certain point in the film, he is able to carve ice sculptures with a chainsaw. That might take a couple of years to learn how to do that right there. Maybe that takes 10 years. I don't know. But I like to think that he's stuck in Groundhog Day for more like 10 years or 12 years. And, Harold Ramis, I think, once said that he thought that Phil was there for 100 years. You know what? I'm going to actually double check that. I usually don't like to Google, but because I hate giving bad information, how long was Phil in Groundhog Day? But I think that Harold Ramis said it could be as little as 10 or as many as 100. He was kind of hedging his bets. But the best theory on the internet, and this is ridiculous, but one theory says he's stuck in the loop for 33 years and 350 days. How did they work it out? I have no idea. And then there's another one that says, no, it was 12 years. Okay, but here's how they work this out. So I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to explain this before closing this episode, how they arrived at this exact number, that he repeated the same day 12,395 times. So according to this, Phil Connors is stuck in Groundhog Day for just under 34 years. That's me being born December 29, 1973. And this would take us up to December 14th of 2007. That is how many days Bill Murray's character is stuck in Groundhog Day, according to this. Okay, how did they work it out? There are 38 days actually shown on screen, as well as 414 days mentioned in the film, and that leaves 11,931 days, which Phil spends learning a host of new talents and interests. It's based on the theory. This is a Malcolm Gladwell theory. It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert on any given subject. So, if it takes at least 10 years to get good at anything, so they're saying he could be a master ice sculpturist in about 10,000 hours. Okay, so it's not exact. They're still taking a guess. But based on some of the skills and talents, he becomes a master piano player. The guy could barely touch the keys. Now he's a master piano player. Okay. Well, I don't know if that's accurate, but that's certainly interesting to look at. And I like that they included the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours theory, which, again, it's just a theory. This is all theory. I think that he was in Groundhog Day for at least 10 years. You can tell me in the comments, if you've seen the film, what your thoughts are. And again, before closing this, let me just see if this is on a streaming platform that we can all see. Also, it's kind of funny that Punxsutawney fell. I guess, did he not see his shot? Whatever it was, Punxsutawney fell here in New York. They said it's going to be an early spring. Newsflash. We've had 45 degrees and rain for like 3 straight weeks. So I don't know, the prediction of an early spring, it feels like we're almost there already, Fingers crossed. Let's see what we got here. Okay, because I know that Groundhog Day has been on Netflix and it was on HBO Max at various points. So right now it is free on the AMC channel. Yeah, it's free on the AMC channel, and other than that, it's available it's available on Amazon Prime to rent and Apple TV to rent. But unless you get AMC, and I know that sometimes AMC is bundled with other channels, it's worth a rental. If you've never seen it, it's worth the $2, the $3. It is as good as it gets, which another good movie with Jack Nicholson. But as far as movie comedies, you're unlikely to do better. Hollywood, you're unlikely to do better. And I mentioned, before I close, in the Carl Weathers retrospective, which I recorded earlier, that Bill Murray and Harold Ramis were very, very close. They made Stripes together. They did Ghostbusters together and Ghostbusters 2. And Harold Ramis was the director and the creator, writer of Groundhog Day. I think that he co-wrote it, but it was his story. And Bill Murray, of course, worked on it. It was a collaborative effort, but they had some problems making the movie. The movie looks like everything was hunky-dory between everyone, but they had major issues, and they really were not friends for a very long time, for almost 2 decades. And then when Harold Ramis got sick, very sick, and he was terminal, they did bury the hatchet. And, Bill Murray, for all of the sarcasm and, the way that he is such a distinctive individual in regular life, and I know he's gotten into some trouble. He's had issues on sets. He had the controversy with Lucy Liu on Charlie's Angels, where he just thought she was awful, but he didn't go about it the right way. Like, it was just bad. He's had those moments where his sort of cranky personality, Gina Davis talked about it. She didn't really have a very good time filming Quick Change. But he is a distinctive individual. And there are many Bill Murray stories. The overwhelming number of Bill Murray stories, there's a documentary on this, are favorable. That Bill Murray will just be at a bar in New York City and ask if he can work the bar that night. Like, he just does weird stuff like that because he is just a different kind. Like, he marches to his own tune, and that marching to his own tune has got him into trouble. He's still working, and it appears that he has a bigger role in the new Ghostbusters Frozen Empire than he had in the Ghostbusters Afterlife. Movie was okay, but I hope that the trailer, which teases that the OG guys are going to be bigger and more present in this story, I hope it's true. Because, hey, Dr. Peter Venkman, the character he played in Ghostbusters, there are plenty of people that would say, no, that's Bill Murray's best film character. Some people would say Carl, from Caddyshack. But Peter Venkman is a great character. And I hope that we get a lot of Peter Venkman in the new Ghostbusters film. And I hope that you've enjoyed episode 76 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast about the movie Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day. If you've checked out this episode on the YouTube channel and you enjoyed it and you enjoy the content in general, haven't clicked like and subscribe yet, be very pleased if you do. Turn on the notifications as well. Or if you caught this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify, iTunes, and the rest, click like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 77 real soon.